In northern China, there are mountains that no longer exist, not because nature erased them, because humans did. Entire peaks cut apart. Valleys filled, rivers redirected. Millions of tons of earth moved by machines that never seemed to stop. Today, when people fly over certain parts of China, they see flat land where mountains once stood, cities rising from places that used to be unreachable, highways crossing terrain that once terrified travelers. And it raises a disturbing question. How far is a country willing to go to reshape nature itself? Because this is not the story of building roads or expanding cities. This is the story of a nation that decided mountains were standing in its way and moved them. For thousands of years, mountains protected China. They were barriers against invasion, natural fortresses, walls built by the earth itself. Villages lived beneath them. Dynasties worshipped them. Poets wrote about them as symbols of eternity. In China, mountains were never just rocks. They were sacred. But in the modern age, sacred things can become obstacles, especially when a country is growing faster than almost any civilization in human history. In the late 20th century, China began transforming at a speed the world had never seen before. Villages became cities. Dirt roads became highways. Empty land became forests of steel and concrete. Every year, millions of people moved toward urban centers. Factories expanded. Trains multiplied. Construction cranes filled the sky. The country was racing toward the future, but the land itself had a problem. Too many mountains. And then came an idea so massive, it sounded impossible. What if they simply removed the mountains? At first, it felt absurd, even dangerous. How do you erase something that has existed for millions of years? How do you flatten entire landscapes without destroying everything around them? But slowly, the idea stopped sounding crazy. The orders were given, the machines arrived, and the mountains began to disappear. In the province of Gansu, enormous excavators clawed into the earth day and night. Explosions echoed through valleys that had once been silent for centuries. Dust covered entire towns. People woke up to the sound of dynamite instead of birds. Families watched from rooftops as pieces of mountains collapsed into clouds of smoke. Some were amazed. Others were terrified. No one had ever seen nature itself being dismantled on this scale. Thousands of workers spread across the terrain like ants. Bulldozers pushed soil endlessly. Truck after truck carried away rock and debris. Engineers studied the land like surgeons preparing an operation. And then, the mountain roads vanished. Entire hills began shrinking month after month, as if the earth itself was melting away. Satellite images later revealed something almost surreal. Places that once looked like giant wrinkles in the landscape had become flat gray plains. Nature had been rewritten. But what the world saw from above was only part of the story, because beneath the ambition was something deeper. Pressure. China's population was exploding. Its economy was hungry. Its cities were suffocating. The government believed expansion was survival. Without land, growth would stop. And if growth stopped, everything could collapse. So mountains became sacrifices to the future. Entire communities were relocated, old homes demolished, ancient landscapes erased forever. And still, the machines kept moving, faster, louder, bigger. At night, construction lights glowed across the valleys like artificial suns. Workers slept in temporary camps, surrounded by dust and noise. Some spent years without seeing their families. The work never truly stopped, because every delay cost millions, And behind every deadline was fear. Fear of slowing down, fear of failure, fear of falling behind the world. And then, the problems began. Scientists warned that flattening mountains could destabilize ecosystems. Soil erosion increased. Dust storms became worse. Water systems shifted unpredictably. In some regions, heavy rains triggered landslides. The earth was reacting. Nature was pushing back. But questioning giant projects inside China was never simple. For many, silence felt safer. Meanwhile, a different story was shown. Beautiful renderings, future megacities, green parks, economic miracles, a vision of progress rising from flattened earth. And to millions, it worked, because the transformation looked unbelievable. High-speed rail lines crossed regions once considered impossible. Entire districts appeared where mountains had stood only years earlier. It felt futuristic, almost unreal. But behind every futuristic skyline, something ancient had vanished. Forests, villages, sacred landscapes, memories. To elderly residents, mountains were not geography. They were family. Lost. But history rarely slows down for grief. China continued building, and the world continued watching. Some saw inspiration. Others saw warning signs. Because this was bigger than construction. It was a glimpse into the future of humanity itself, a future where technology becomes powerful enough to reshape entire environments, where economic survival justifies almost anything, where nature is no longer permanent, only useful. And perhaps that is the most unsettling part of this story. Not the machines, not the explosions, not even the mountains disappearing, but how quickly humans normalize the impossible. A mountain exists for millions of years, and then one generation decides it should be gone. Incredible, terrifying, almost godlike. Today, many of these regions continue to change. Roads stretch across artificial plains. Apartment towers rise where cliffs once stood. Factories operate on land carved from ancient terrain. To younger generations, the mountains are already myths, and maybe that is how history changes. Not suddenly, but quietly. One destroyed landscape at a time. Because once you can move mountains, what happens next? And maybe the scariest truth is not that China changed nature. It's that humanity finally proved it can.